From our studios in Southern California, this is RUNTALK. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. On today's show, we're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses. Most runners really don't attend to their strengths and weaknesses. They follow a generic training plan, and they do whatever workouts on whatever day that either they have themselves have planned to do or that others have told them to do. And one guiding principle of training is that you need to understand your strengths as a runner and then skew the training to those strengths. And so on today's show, we're going to talk all about different strengths and weaknesses, how they're manifested in runners, how to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then how to skew the training to accommodate your strengths. And so one major overriding principle of strengths, and when I talk about strengths and weaknesses, a lot of that comes down to the runner's fiber type, muscle fiber type. We all have a mix of 3 different muscle fiber types. There's actually there's a lot more than 3. There's gradations between them. But scientists have tried to make it simple, and so we categorize the fiber types into 3 distinct categories. One are the slow twitch, the oxidative, the fibers that are really good for aerobic metabolism. Then we have fast twitch A and fast twitch B. And so the 2 extremes are the slow twitch, sometimes they're called type 1, and then the fast twitch B, the type 2B, which are meant for a lot of speed and strength and power. And then the intermediate ones they're still a fast twitch fiber, but we call them fast twitch A or type 2A, which have characteristics of both the slow twitch and the fast twitch B. But there's also gradations in between those different fiber types. So we actually have a long array of different fiber types, but we can categorize them into 3 distinct. And so a lot of your strengths and weaknesses as a runner comes down to the fiber type that you have. If you've got a lot of fast twitch fibers, like in the specific muscle used for running, if you've got a lot of the fast twitch B fibers, then you're more of a sprinter. Say, if you have more than 50% of your muscle fiber type is of the fast twitch B variety, then you shouldn't even be a distance runner. You should be focused on the sprints or other power type events, other sports that are more power strength based. So if you are a distance runner, that implies that you have more than 50% of your muscle fiber type is slow twitch, because if it's not more than 50% slow twitch, you shouldn't even be a distance runner. So we have to make some assumptions here that if you are a distance runner, anything from 800 meters up to the marathon and even beyond the marathon, then you should have more slow twitch than fast twitch. So let's first make that assumption. But even if you have more slow twitch than fast twitch, there's still a lot of differences between distance runners, right? Somebody can be 60% slow twitch and 40% fast twitch, or someone could be 90% slow twitch and 10% fast twitch. And that's going to change your strengths and weaknesses and how you should train. Hi, Christopher. Thank you for joining us. It's been a while since I've seen you on here, but maybe you're here every week. I just don't know because I'm not seeing. But thank you for saying hello. And thank you everyone on Instagram for coming. Amanda Chesterton, thank you for coming. I see a lot of people coming. Thanks for joining us. So your muscle fiber type is a big part of the strengths and weaknesses. And there are others. We'll get to them in a few minutes. But the muscle fiber type is a big part of your strengths and weaknesses and dictates how you should train. And so let's talk about the extreme case. Someone who's got 90% slow twitch and 10% fast twitch. Those kinds of runners are going to be better suited for much longer races, marathons, even ultra marathons, because the slow twitch are the aerobic kinds of fibers, the ones that don't fatigue as fast. The fast twitch fibers, not only do they contract faster than the slow twitch fiber, that's why they're called the fast twitch fiber. They twitch faster, but they also take a lot shorter amount of time to fatigue. They're also fast fatiguing. Whereas the slow twitch fibers take longer to fatigue. They can go for a much longer duration of time. And so this tells you something about how you should train. So say someone's got 90% slow twitch and 10% fast twitch, they should load up on the aerobic work. A lot of mileage, a lot of long tempo runs, a lot of high quality aerobic work, really push the endurance kind of work. Whereas someone at the opposite extreme maybe they have 60% slow twitch and 40% fast twitch because they're still a distance runner. So maybe they just have slightly more slow twitch than fast twitch, but they have a good percentage of fast twitch. Those people should do more sprint work. They should do more speed work. They do more shorter, faster interval training, and they would be better suited for like 800 meters or mile races because they don't need, they need they need a lot of good anaerobic metabolism. The fast twitch fibers are better at anaerobic metabolism, whereas the slow twitch fibers are better at aerobic metabolism. And so races like 800 meters and 1500 meters a mile, they require a lot of anaerobic metabolism. They rely a lot on anaerobic metabolism. And so runners who have more fast twitch fibers, they're going to be better at anaerobic metabolism and better suited for those races, and also better suited for those short, faster workouts. I'm trying to look to see who's in the room. Dana Bloom. Oh, hi, Dana. Nice to see you. It's been a while. Hey, Dana. Good to see you, Dana. Thanks for coming. And so the exact percentage of your fiber type has huge implications for how you should train. Not everyone should train the same way, even if they're all distance runners. And so the big question is, well, how do you know what your fiber type is? Unless you go get a muscle biopsy in a lab and they can look at the muscle under a microscope and be able to see how many fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers there are, then the other way you can know is there's a few different ways. One is to run many races and many different kinds of workouts over several years to see where you excel. Run a marathon, run a 5K, run a mile race on the track, do many different kinds of races in your early days of being a runner, in your developmental years of being a runner, to be able to figure out where your strengths lie, what kind of muscle fiber type that you have. Because if you've got a lot of slow twitch fibers, you're going to be better at the marathon than you are at the mile. If you've got a significant percentage of fast twitch fibers, you're going to be better at the mile than you are at the marathon. And so spend time running lots of different races over several years, and then you'll be able to figure out where do your strengths lie. The other way that you can figure this out is by looking at your body, looking at your muscle structure. For example, with myself, I know that I have thick calves, I have thick thighs, I've got bigger muscles, I've got a lot of muscle mass on my lower body, and that tells me that I have more fast twitch. Fibers have a greater propensity to enlarge with training compared to slow twitch fibers. So if you were to take a cross-section of the muscle and look at it under a microscope, you would see that the fast twitch fibers are larger. They're larger types of fibers than compared to the slow twitch fibers. That's like if you look at the best distance runners in the world, they have very slim legs. You look at the Kenyan, Ethiopian distance runners, very slim legs. They don't have a lot of muscle mass on their legs. The slow twitch fibers don't take up as much room in the muscle. They don't create as thick of a muscle as the fast twitch fibers do. So just looking at how much muscle mass you have on your lower body is also a great way to see where your strengths lie. And so if you've got a lot of muscle mass, can you still run a marathon? Yeah, you could, but it's going to be a lot more difficult because the larger the muscle mass that you have on your lower body, the more oxygen it's going to cost to lift that leg up and put it down, and lift that leg up and put it down. Whereas for the more middle distance races, where you need a lot more speed and power, larger muscles are better. Look at sprinters. There's a big difference between world-class sprinters and world-class distance runners and what their body looks like. For sprinting, for running very fast, it's not about oxygen consumption. It's all about anaerobic metabolism, about power output. And so you need thicker muscles that are larger, that can produce more force against the ground. And so looking at your lower body and looking at your calves, looking at your thighs, your quadriceps, your hamstrings, gives you an idea of your muscle fiber type without having to subject yourself to going to get a muscle biopsy. Because if you know you've got thicker thighs, thicker calves that are bigger than most distance runners, then you know that you'll be more suited for the shorter middle distance races, mile, 800 meters, even up to 5K. But even when you get to 5K, it's still much more aerobic than anaerobic, and so slim legs still helps even in a race as short as a 5K. So that's one way of knowing where your strengths and weaknesses will lie. That's one way I know that I'm never going to be as good at the marathon as I am at the mile because I've got thicker legs, I've got thicker thighs and thicker calves. It's difficult for me to transport that mass over the course of a marathon. The other way you can know is by how you feel during different workouts. In today's technological world, everyone's got the GPS. People move away from the feeling, and it's very important to understand what it feels like. How do you feel when you're doing, a 5-mile tempo run at the high end of aerobic work compared to when you're doing 200-meter or 400-meter fast reps on the track? Understanding that feeling will also tell you where your strengths and weaknesses lie. Like I know that for me, when I go to the track and do 200s and 400s and I'm running them fast, it just feels more natural. I like the feeling of running fast. That feels better to me than when I go do a long tempo run and I'm asking myself to hold a solid aerobic pace for a long period of time. That's much more difficult for me than it is to go on the track and bust out 200s and 400s really fast. And so you have to be in tune with the different feelings of these different workouts and which feels more natural. Does it feel weird to run fast, or does it feel natural for you to run fast compared to how it feels to do the aerobic work? And so that's very important. So taking those things together, looking at the variety of races and where you excel versus where you don't excel, looking at your muscle mass, do you have slim legs, do you have thicker thighs and thicker calves, and then also looking at how you feel during different kinds of workouts. Taking those three things combined will tell you where your strengths and weaknesses lie. And then once you know that, that's very empowering, because then you can skew your training to your strengths. People always tell me all the time that you should work on your weaknesses. That is not the right way to train. You always want to train based on what you're genetically predisposed for. That will always give you the best result. You can spend years trying to focus on your weaknesses. You'll never be as good of a runner as if you focus on your strengths. Always focus on what you are genetically predisposed for, and to some extent neglect your weaknesses. You want to work on your weaknesses a little bit because you're only as good as your weakest link, but that should never be the emphasis of your training. The emphasis of your training, the overall theme of your training, should always target what you're genetically predisposed for. And so if your parents were athletes, look at what your parents excelled at. Some people don't know because their parents may not have been runners, but that's okay. But just look at other activities that your parents excel at, because that will tell you what you excel at. If you have parents who are musicians, you should be a musician. So, always skew your training, always skew your path in life toward what you're genetically predisposed for. And so ask your parents what their strengths and weaknesses are, physically or intellectually or whatever the case may be. Always skew the work that you do toward what you're genetically predisposed for, always to your strengths. So let's take some examples. Say you are of the long distance variety. You've got a lot of slow twitch muscle fibers and you're very good at aerobic work. Then, as I mentioned before, spend time on building up the aerobic work. Do more mileage because you have the muscle fiber type that's going to adapt to that. So do more mileage. Get the mileage up as high as you can. That's safe, that you won't get injured, and you systematically increase it over time. But do a lot of aerobic work. Also do a lot of hard aerobic work, at the upper end of aerobic metabolism. So the lactate threshold training. Do a lot of the threshold training, the high-end aerobic work, the tempo runs. You can do it as interval workouts on the track where you're running at your threshold pace and you're doing a high volume of reps at threshold pace. Okay, do a lot of that aerobic work and push the aerobic work and minimize the amount of anaerobic work. Then conversely, if you're more of a middle distance runner type and you excel more and you have more fast twitch fibers, then spend more time on that. Don't do as much mileage. Don't do as much of the tempo training, the threshold training. Do more of the speed work. Do more of the 200s, the 400s, that kind of work where you focus on anaerobic metabolism. Maybe you do more strength training. It's interesting in you look at social media, people say a lot of different things without explaining why they're doing what they're doing. They all claim things about strength training. Strength training is not for every distance runner. You have to have the predisposition to strength training. You have to have the ability to adapt to that kind of strength training in order to get something out of it. And so if you've got more of the fast twitch fibers, then something like strength training may be beneficial for you because you have the muscle fiber type that is going to naturally adapt to that strength and power training. Somebody like, the Kenyan Ethiopian distance runners with the slim legs and not a lot of muscle mass, and people who are more of the marathoner type, they're not going to get as much out of the strength training because they don't have the fiber type to react and respond to that kind of strength training and improve strength and power to the degree that somebody who's got more fast twitch fibers has. So strength training is not for everybody. You have to understand your own specific physiological strengths and match that to the training. There's never an easy answer to this. That's why the process of training is very complex, but that's also where the beauty lies, is trying to figure out the right puzzle for each runner. And so if you've got a lot of the fast twitch fibers, like I said, spend time on the speed work, spend more time on the strength training if necessary, maybe plyometric training, steep hill training, those kinds of things that will help you generate more power and strength because you've got the fiber type for those activities. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. Here somebody's got a question. Reason why some can't run faster. You have to tell me the context of that question. I mean, most people would be able to run faster with the right stimulus, but you got to put that into context. So, like age is a context. Like I know myself, I'm not going to run faster now than I did 20 years ago when I was in my 20s. So you got to put the question into context. But most people can run faster if they do the right kind of training to highlight their strengths. But there are limits. If you've reached the maximum amount of miles you can run and the maximum amount of speed work you can do, there's going to be a limit. Some people aren't going to, we all have our limit that we're not going to run faster than what we have before. And so part of the beauty of training is trying to reach that physiological ceiling that we all have. So if you can explain the question a little bit more and put into context, then I can shed some more light on it. But there are going to be some specific reasons as to why someone doesn't run faster. Maybe they've reached their physiological ceiling, or maybe they're older, and saying older, I mean, even 40 is as old. No one's going to run faster in their 40s than they did in their 20s unless they were not trying very hard in their 20s, and now they're trying much harder in their 40s. So there's a lot of reasons why somebody might not run faster. Hey, Tara, and hey, thanks for joining us, Tara. Tara all the way from New Jersey. I used to run with Tara in high school a long time ago. Tara was a great runner. Say hello, Tara, to everybody. Tara Riccoto. Go follow Tara Riccoto on Instagram. She was a great runner in New Jersey in high school, all-state runner in high school. But I still have a faster PR than her at Homedale Park. If you guys are from New Jersey, you know Homedale Park, great course to run on. Tara and me, we're going to go run the high school alumni race in November at Homedale Park. Start training, Tara, because we're doing that race. So it's very important to understand what your strengths are. Tara's a perfect example. I could talk about Tara for a second. Tara is one of those runners who gets better the longer the race. Not as much speed. Her mile PR, I think she ran 5:10 in college, if I remember correctly. So good, but not stellar. But she's much better at the longer races. And so you want to skew your training to the longer races, to the more aerobic work, if that's what your strength is. You always want to skew your training to your strengths. And so what if you're running in a group and everybody has the same workout to do? There's ways to alter the specific workouts to accommodate your strengths. For example, let's take the two extremes. If say you're doing an interval workout, say you got a whole group and everyone's doing 800-meter reps at VO2 max pace. Now, say you have two different runners running that 800-meter workout. You have the more speed type runner and the more endurance type runner. If you go to my website, runfit.com, you'll see the training programs that I have. A lot of them are broken up into speed type runners and endurance type runners. Nobody else is doing that. So if you're looking for a training program, the 5K, 10K programs I have on my website, there are different versions of it. And so I'll explain what those different versions are with this example. So say you have people doing an 800-meter rep workout at VO2 max pace, and you have a speed type runner and an endurance type runner. The endurance type runner should take that 800-meter workout and extend it, make it 1,000 meters or make it 1,200 meters because they're better at the endurance. Whereas the speed type runner can maybe take that 800-meter workout and maybe make it 600 meters, but do more reps. And so the total distance of the workout may be the same, but the purpose is met through two different pathways, attending to the physiological strengths of that runner. The speed type runner do shorter reps of the intervals, but do more of them to accommodate, to get to the total distance of the workout that you want to accomplish. Whereas the more endurance type runner increase the duration of each rep, because that's what caters to your strength. You're able to hold a harder pace for a longer period of time. And so instead of 800 meters, do thousands or 1,200 meters, whereas the more speed type runner, instead of doing 800 meters, do 600 meters or even 400 meters, but just do more reps of them. It'll be an easier way to accommodate the total distance. And so there's one great way of being able to meet at the same point, but coming at that same point through two different directions based on the physiological strengths of each runner. Okay? I hope you listen to that little point, because that's golden. That is something that none of these other online coaches you see on Instagram are doing. Nobody offers that in their training plans. Nobody thinks like that. The runners themselves don't think like that. The coaches don't think like that. Everyone on the team, if you go to a college team or a high school team, everyone's doing the same workout. Nobody thinks about catering to the different strengths and weaknesses of the different runners. And that's extremely important if you want to get the right stimulus for you so that you can be the best runner that you can be. It's all about you trying to be the best runner that you can be, or if you're a coach, coaching your runners to be the best runners they can be, and understanding the different strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you're a coach, or even if you're a runner, that takes time to do. You're not going to know right away. If you're a new runner, or if you're a coach of a runner, you're just starting to work with them, there's no way you can know that right away. It's going to take time to figure out what the runner's strengths and weaknesses are. That's why, I always laugh when I see, on the online coaching world is very interesting. Everybody talks about no cookie cutter training programs. You get a customized program specifically for you. That's bullshit. I'm allowed to say bullshit because this is my TV show. So I'm allowed to say what I want to say. Of course it's cookie cutter. When you first start coaching somebody, or if you're a new runner and you're coaching yourself, there's no way you can know right away where your strengths and weaknesses lie. That's going to take time of working with somebody one-on-one, or just your own experience as a runner. And only then can you then figure out how to skew the training to match your strengths. It's going to take time. So by definition, every coach online offers cookie cutter training, no matter what they say. Because when you first start coaching somebody, there's no way you can know what their strengths are unless you interview them, unless they have many years of history of running behind them, and they know themselves very well, and they can report that to you. And they can say, over the last 10 years of running, here's my running history, here's what works for me, here's what doesn't work for me, here's where my strengths lie. Unless they can articulate that to the coach, there's no way the coach is going to know that. You're going to have to spend time working with that person, training that person, see how they respond to certain workouts, see what workouts don't go well, what workouts do go well, see how that translates to racing. All of that takes time. Who else we got there? I can't read all the things, but hi Tara, hi, hi BFit Dave, hey Bethany, thanks for joining us. Bethany's great too. Go follow BFit Davis on Instagram. She's fantastic. She's got 5 kids. I don't know how she does all of her own training and coaches other people with 5 kids. I have no kids. I don't know how she does it, but she's amazing. Go follow BFit Davis on Instagram. So that's really what I want to talk about today, is how to understand what your strengths are as a runner and how to skew the training to those strengths and not worry so much about the weaknesses. You can spend some time, if you're going to spend some time on the weaknesses, spend them early in the training program. So I've talked about before that when you have a big race that you're training for, always work backwards. To plan the training, you always work backwards from the date of that race. And you plan the training backwards to figure out what you need to do, like 4 weeks before, 8 weeks before, 12 weeks before, and so on. So if you're going to focus on some weaknesses, focus on the weaknesses early, far away from the time of the race. As you get closer and closer and closer to the most important race that you're gearing up for, that you're training for, focus the training more on the strengths so that you're really hammering the strengths as you get close to the date of the race. Does that make sense? Yes or yes? Good. Glad that makes sense. So that's what you want to focus on. The weaknesses early, far away from the race, weaknesses early, and then as you move through the training program and you get closer to the most important race, then you focus more and more and more on the strengths and focus on that kind of training. So it's very important first to figure out what the strengths are and then skew the training to the strengths. And like I mentioned, if you're looking for a great training program, on my website, the 5K, 10K programs are broken up into speed type runners and endurance type runners. It's very important to understand what kind of runner you are. You know, myself, I've always been a speed type runner. When I started in the sport when I was 11 years old, I raced the 100 meters and the 400 meters. I love those. I still do. I mean, I don't get a chance to race them as much anymore, but I haven't raced 100 in a long time. I would love to do that because I've always been better at the speed than the endurance, whereas a lot of runners are the other way. You know, I talk about women a lot. Women tend to be better long distance runners than middle distance runners. It's hard to find a woman. You take a cross section of the population, most women do better the longer the race. There are exceptions, of course, but most women will be more of the endurance type than of the speed type. But if you are of the speed type, then you have to skew the training toward that kind of training. You know, do more speed work, more short, faster intervals, and focus on the fast twitch fibers and the anaerobic metabolism that those fibers are better suited for. The other issue when it comes to strengths and weaknesses is the mental or the psychological strengths and weaknesses. You know, we all have a way that we navigate through life. We can navigate through life being very intense about what we're doing. We can look at life as a series of sprints with recovery intervals or like an interval workout, or we can look at life as a marathon. You know, a lot of people like to say that life is a marathon, not a sprint. Well, it depends on who you are. For me, life is a series of sprints. For other people, life is a marathon. And so you have to look at your own psychology and what you are good at psychologically. Myself, I'm very good at a lot of discomfort for a very short period of time. I'm not as good at a little bit of discomfort over a long period of time, like a marathon. You know, a marathon doesn't start to become uncomfortable until late in the race when you have a lot of muscle fiber damage and you're running out of muscle glycogen. That's when it starts to become uncomfortable, and you have to deal with that situation for a long period of time. I'm much better at racing 800 meters or a mile where it's extremely uncomfortable, but it only lasts a few minutes. You know, 800-meter race only lasts 2 minutes and change. But I'm really good at that. I'm very intense. Anybody who knows my personality knows that I'm a very intense guy. You can see it on these run talks. I'm a very intense person. And so that's why I've always been attracted to those middle distance races, because it's intense. Whereas a marathon is not so intense. It's a long aerobic run. You're out there for a few hours. Even the best in the world are out there for a little bit more than 2 hours. So it takes a while. And so you have to know yourself. You have to know your personality. You have to know your psychology. Are you very intense and you can handle an enormous amount of discomfort for a short period of time? Or are you the other way, where you don't like to be very intense and you can handle a little bit of discomfort for stretched out over a long period of time? So you have to combine that with your physiological strengths, and then together, that's how you skew your training, okay? And so that gives you a lot of guidance on how to plan your training based on your physiological strengths and on your personality and your psychological strengths, okay? If you ever meet me in person, I'm a lot more intense than I am through a computer screen. You know, here I'm looking at myself. When I'm looking at real people, oh, I'm really intense. Even back when I was in college and I had professors write me letters of reference to go to grad school, that was back when you could see the letters of reference. They didn't put them in sealed envelopes. And I would read the letters of reference. And all my professors would say that I'm an intense guy. It was always amazing to me how even my professors as an undergrad were able to pick up on the fact that I'm an intense person. I've always been very intense. But that can work to your favor if you know how to train that. If you know how to skew your training toward that personality type, that works in my favor. And so it can work in your favor too if you know what your personality, most people should know what their personality is, And so skew the training to that personality. Like I said before, you will always perform better, both in running and in life, if you skew your training, skew your work toward what you're genetically predisposed for, toward what your natural strengths and tendencies are. You'll always be more successful. If you're a business person, always focus on your strengths and outsource what you're not good at. If you know that you're not good at marketing, don't try to take that on yourself. Outsource it. If you know you're good at operations and managing people, if you're a natural leader and you can do that, then that's what you do. That's what you focus on. So it's the same thing. That's why running has a lot of metaphors for life. I've talked about this for many years, how the things you learn about yourself through running, you can apply that to many areas of your life. Okay? So it's not just about your training to be a runner. It's the training and the approach you take to the rest of your life. You have to know what your strengths are, and then you cater to those strengths. So, having said all of that, I hope you got a lot out of this. And each episode, I end with a final thought. My final thought for the day today is exactly that. That, look at things that are beyond running. Because running is just running. Ultimately, who cares? It's just running. It has no existential meaning. People just run around a track or run in the street, but it's the meaning we associate to that activity. So take the meaning that you associate to that activity and apply it to the rest of your life, whether it's business or it's family. I'm sure, I don't know if Bethany is still watching, but Bethany, I'm sure the lessons that you have learned about yourself through the training that you do, you can take that to your big family that you have. It makes you a better mother. It makes you a better wife. Take the things you learn about yourself through your training and apply it to the rest of your life, because that's what the real lesson is all about, right? Ultimately, it's just running. Nobody cares what your PR is in a marathon or a mile. Only you care. But if you can take those lessons and apply it to all the other work you do in the rest of your life, your relationships, your business, everything else you do, well, now you have something to hang your hat on. Because now you can march through life more successfully in everything else you do because of what you have learned from running. That's where the real lessons lie. I get emotional when I talk about this stuff. That's the beauty of running. How it enables us to be better humans in everything else that we do, in our contribution to society. So with that, have a great week, and I will see you next week. Thank you for coming to another episode of Run Talk from our beautiful studios in Southern California. I'm your host, Dr. Jason Karp. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.